Today's talk focuses on two primary issues. First, we do a repeat or review of the 45% upgrade that Tesla received. And secondly, we take a look at the Model S Plaid that's been introduced at the Nurburing. It has drawn sort of a lot of attention, and we wanted to share some thoughts on that as well. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Thanks for joining us once again. As you can see, we're working hard to improve the quality of our sound, and hence you'll see some changes in audio as a way to do that, and your input is greatly appreciated in our process. The second thing we wanted to note is that we wanted to thank our subscribers as well as our Patreon supporters. If you like the shows that we do, we'd appreciate you subscribing because it makes a huge difference in the growth, viability, and improvement of our channel. So what I decided to do for our current show was we just had a show focused on the stock price, the 45% bump that was given to Tesla by an analyst. And this was somewhat unexpected, and we had some sound difficulties based on switching to a new mic and some rattling in the background. So I decided to pull that down and somewhat do a sort of a change-up show to address those challenges. So hence, we're rolling in that regard. So, and I also wanted to know, I can see all of you when you say hello, and I appreciate it. We'll acknowledge you at the end of the show. That way, for those not on the show while we're recording, they'll be able to sort of pick us up later on. If any issues with sound quality or you can't see me, etc., please note that. We'll definitely work to change that. So the first thing we wanted to review today is that Elon Musk made an announcement about the Nurburing. And what was interesting was that, as you all know, the Nurburing is a track in Germany, 150,000 seat track, 14 miles long. There are actually different configurations for racing versus testing cars, so they are different. So we were kind of surprised, blown away by the fact that there's an interesting phenomenon going on, which is that after Elon Musk announced this, all of a sudden there became this viral challenge to Elon Musk associated with is he going to be able to run the track or won't he be able to run the track? And so I was amazed by the number of articles that popped up, because after Elon Musk put out his tweet, it was announced by the Nurburing that Tesla was not scheduled to run. And so it became a battle between, is Elon going back to his old days of announcing things that are not going to occur? And so there's kind of a back and forth, and we actually had a few folks shipping comments to us about, oh, this will never happen. And it shows Elon returning to the bad old days of inappropriate comments. So as you all know, there's now video. We're going to include a clip from a video of a Model S Plaid running on the track as a photo for this show. But in general, we were just sort of surprised at how big a deal this was, and surprised at Nurburing to have them running just as Elon Musk predicted. And I actually am surprised at it. The issue with this whole thing is that it really shows how intense the pressure and the eye of the public is on Elon Musk and what's happening at Tesla. And as they get this kind of publicity and attention, it's actually very lucrative, because the more attention you're focused on the performance aspect of what Tesla's cars are doing, the less focused you are on other issues. But it really keeps the public eye on the cars and increases the potential that individuals will end up buying the car once it becomes price effective for each segment. So the bottom line is that it's great publicity to some extent. We think it doesn't make a lot of sense, but hey, if it causes the company to do better, all to the better. So the next thing we wanted to review on this is the introduction of Plaid. So as we've discussed previously, every 90 days, all of Tesla's cars are receiving engineering changes. So unlike other manufacturers where only 25% of the car is being built in-house and the rest is ordered parts, Tesla actually has about 65% vertical integration. So they're making changes on a constant basis to improve their vehicles, even if the external of the car is not changing. So with that said, there was a change to Raven, which was a suspension improvement. There are other improvements associated with it that have been going on before they put a name on it. But we think that the latest change associated with Plaid, it is a big change, and we're actually looking forward to the performance numbers that emerge from it. So in essence, Tesla has gone to 3 motors rather than 2. So the vehicle is actually carrying about 500 pounds extra. So on one hand, I think that might affect slightly what the range of the vehicle is. But with that extra motor, I believe we're going to see a quicker car, perhaps dropping from the 2.2 to 2.4 per second 0-60 down into the 2.1, perhaps even a 2.0. And so we'll see what happens with this. But I don't think they would make the change unless it was enhancing performance, but we're not getting the specs yet. But it seems like a good thing. The other issue that popped up in this case is the fact that you can use computers to sort of balance out how that power hits. And the question that we have is, why stop at 3 motors? Why not just do 4 motors? Because the motors are somewhat inside the wheel wells. And if you have 2 of them, that's in balance. 3 of them, you can create the balance by managing the power output from computers. But if you just put 4 of them in, you have complete balance around the car, and it doesn't have to be technologically managed. All the motors just have to perform, as needed, and we go from there. I'm intrigued because we'll see what happens, and I'm looking forward to you guys giving us name suggestions on what the above Plaid vehicles are going to be. One other note on the Plaid is that it's only going to be made available to Model X, Model X, and to the new Roadster. It will not be available for the 3 or the Y. So we're looking forward to how these numbers play out in the near term, and we look forward to actually your input on this aspect of what's going on with Tesla. So I guess the other thing is, if you take a look at the video, Teslarati, Electrek, all these different folks are offering video, including Car and Driver, of the vehicles doing high-speed turns on the freeway or on the Nurburing, and the car looks good. The quote given was that there was some tire shredding going on when it comes to this car running the track. As you'll notice, the clip that's offered, there's a series of red and white lines that are along a racetrack, and those are set up to show you where the optimal line is or drive line is through that turn. In the case of the Model S that's pictured in the clip that's available, the driver actually sort of slips just wide of where they're supposed to be. This will slow down the time of the vehicle, but it also has kind of warning sounds associated with getting outside optimal spots in terms of sort of rubber bumpers that are along the track. Not a real big deal in terms of shredding tires. It takes time to, if you're a new driver to the vehicle, get a feel for the body lean of the vehicle so that as it comes out of one turn, it goes into another. And so we're actually looking forward to what the numbers that emerge from this new Plaid prototype are, including not only the change in motor, but they're also including kind of a rear spoiler with it, and evidently there's some change in sort of the front fender of the vehicle to evidently enhance performance. So a lot of changes, all of them seem to make sense to us. I think it'll result in sort of better control at high speed, but also perhaps better numbers when we come to performance. And I think there's nothing to be argued negatively on this. I think it's all a great situation. The second part of our show today, we wanted to sort of bounce back to our discussion of the fact that Tesla's stock price has been upgraded, and I think this is great news. Mr. Osha from JMP Securities, a fairly well-regarded analyst, has actually come out and said that the stock price is 45% undervalued, so he gave it a price target of $345. There were 3 points that he shared that he thought drove this. Number one, the e-tron came out with 204 miles of range, while the Model X is in the above 300, 340, depending on how you choose to set it up. The second thing that he pointed out was that clearly there's impact of how China is going to affect them, but sort of the biggest argument he was making is that there's competitors entering the market space. Solutions that are being provided are good, but they really don't meet or eclipse the customer solutions that are provided by Tesla, and therefore he feels that as customers enter the space and they want the best of breed at each price point, Tesla's the best solution, and so therefore there's really no threat to Tesla dominance in the space. And so I would have to agree with the thesis of all the items he mentioned. The reason why we kind of disagreed, as we shared in our first show, with his overall analysis was that we actually think the biggest driver for the stock price going forward is actually going to be the fact that as the China plant comes on and there's battery to support the vehicles produced by that plant, either from the factory in Reno or from suppliers in China or Japan. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out, but basically we think that they're going to start delivering as many vehicles in China to the Chinese market as is being produced in the United States for the global market. So what that is a nice increase in sales, and this nice increase in sales we expect to result in Tesla just having way better numbers right away. And then as the new models of truck, Roadster, Model Y, even pickup truck come on into this environment, it expands the footprint. So we would say if the batteries were there, in full force, Tesla would be able to triple or quadruple its size in 1 year. But I think realistically a double in revenue for the next few years on a year-over-year basis is what Tesla's facing. And these kind of numbers, 100% growth annually, means that the stock price does great. And the $345 price target that was offered, I think, is a fit for what the reality is. So hats off to Tesla. I think this kind of news is, great. There's one other thing on the horizon that sort of popped up, and that is that Toyota is now going to start using Tesla spec batteries that are being built by Panasonic. So this was kind of a news item that hit, and we think that this is actually huge news because, if Toyota is able to sort of reverse engineer the thermal management system of Tesla, and they're getting the same batteries that they've spec'd out to be built by Panasonic, I think it allows Toyota to really close the performance gap and the competitive gap very quickly on what Tesla is doing. I believe we're a year and a half away from these vehicles being delivered as a start, but it is an interesting development. And in the next 90 days, as we get into the China production, we're going to find out if there has been some shakeup in the relationship between Panasonic and Tesla, or there's been a switch to a local manufacturer, be it LG or Cattle, because you'll be able to see the battery manufacturers' names on those batteries. So stay tuned on how this is working out. And I think, the question will be answered. But in the meantime, I think there's a lot of positivity there for Tesla. You have Europe, as we head into 2020, starting to hit manufacturers with extra tariffs if they don't perform a certain way. We have both in China and in Europe intense focus on sort of greenhouse gases and reducing those emissions, and that this is feeding right into Tesla's hands. One of our viewers had asked the question, why is it that both Fiat Chrysler and GM are paying Tesla right now? It turns out that if you produce vehicles under the new rules for both Europe and in this case China, there's a brand new set of rules when it comes to emissions. If you don't have a balancing emissions process between ICE vehicles and electric vehicles, you can pay a very large fine for not having those electric vehicles in your fleet, or you can do what's called pooling, which is you can pay Tesla less money than you have to pay regulators, and that way you can use the Tesla fleet's production and sale of electric vehicles to offset the number of ICE vehicles that you're selling, particularly heavy polluting vehicles like SUVs. And so we kind of talked in our last show about the fact that the folks at Daimler had articulated that they could produce the electric vehicles, but what if customers choose not to purchase them, and how might that affect their relationship with regulators in terms of managing if you will, the costs. So we're intrigued by how this all plays out. And the bottom line is that Tesla is getting nice dollars from different folks. So one of the line items that's going to increase Tesla's earnings over the next few years is definitely the money from GM and from Fiat Chrysler. But do not be surprised if slow sales of EVs being produced by some of these competitors force them into having to pay Tesla dollars. So it's kind of a lurking extra cash thing for Tesla without having to do any more work, and we found it kind of interesting. I'm intrigued because there's this funny thing that's been happening with Tesla. I mean, there are a few comments here regarding what do I think about new EVs in Germany. What do I think about Tesla becoming the greatest car company in the world? It's fascinating right now because a good buddy of mine made a point, which he said, what's strange is that if Tesla, for example, with the truck, broke the truck off as a separate company, made that a public company with a separate CEO, and simply provided battery to that solution, Tesla's trucks could hit the ground within the next 90 days and become 25% of the trucking industry over the next 2 or 3 years. This is not happening. All of the Tesla products are being kept in-house, and the growth of Tesla is limited by its management team, as well as access to all of the resources that it takes to deliver that vehicle. So potentially this is bad because slow time to market could actually mean that you have competitors figuring it out. And so there's been a number of sort of solutions that have been talked about in terms of new vehicles coming out. There's vehicles that have been delivered at the recent European Auto Show. But, I think getting confused about the fact that every major manufacturer has to deliver electric vehicles, even if you don't see vehicles appearing from certain manufacturers at these shows, they're all working on this issue because there's a whole bunch of things impacting it. One of the biggest ones is the fact that in China, for example, BMW's largest sales volume is in China. So as China imposes similar restrictions on the production of ICE vehicles, even BMW is forced into delivering solutions that we may not have seen already globally, but in China we'll see it happening. You know, I don't think that because there's so much market share, etc., at stake, there's no doubt that huge firms have to keep innovating in order to make themselves competitive in the space. And I expect more and new vehicles sort of showing up every 30 to 90 days over the next couple of years. And then once they finally figure out the battery piece, I'd say in the next 2.5, 3 years, you're going to see vehicles that are very, very competitive with what Tesla is doing. And I just think that's the nature of the beast. So to not slow down by Tesla in growing and developing customer relationships and improving on all aspects of performance and anticipating the competition, I don't think is a good idea. But it is very clear that right now Tesla has a clear advantage. Not only in terms of vehicle performance and how batteries perform, but there's also the issue of still lurking in the background of range anxiety, related to the fact that competitors really don't have a large supercharging network that allows people to go long distances without any range challenges. And so I think that it's good to see competitors coming out. Those competitors, to some extent, are a reflection of Tesla. VW is one of the companies that Tesla was consulting in helping them to become a competitor of Tesla's. So to see them producing products that are getting better and better is not a stunner, because Tesla aided them in that process by having open patents. Same thing for manufacturers around the world. I guess the most impressive part that I'm noticing is, despite the open patents, the Chinese competitors were so far behind still, the Chinese government decided to help Tesla build there, versus hoping those other folks, would catch up soon enough for them to have the impact that they want. So, I think it's the whole situation's fascinating. So, item number one we covered is just the Nurburgring and Tesla's bringing a vehicle out in that space. We think that's awesome. Number two, there's a 45% upgrade on the stock. I think this is ahead of what we think will be good earnings, even if it's a loss. But I really think that the focus of everyone right now is, how is China going to hit? And what does the battery use in China say about Tesla's potential? And if Tesla can pick up $8,000 to $10,000 per car more for each car that's produced in China versus vehicles produced in the United States, all of that profit short term, it can be seen, and then how that can be extrapolated going a longer term for the company is pretty awesome. So, I think just a lot of good news out there for Tesla. And I'd say look for the stock to move around a lot, but we think the move is going to be upwards, consistent with what the argument was of this analyst. So, that's sort of the thrust of our show today. Really appreciate you taking time out to chat with us or join us in a chat. I could see a bunch of comments from Jerry and I believe Albert and others. We appreciate all of them. I think what we're going to do is sort of make a copy of those comments and reinsert them into show underneath, so that others can comment on what you had to say as well. We'd appreciate your sharing your after comments as well also. Just a reminder, don't forget 25 leg lifts per leg while you're sitting in a chair, raising your legs up. Interesting, Jerry, comment about he doesn't see 8K per car being available as the Chinese dollar falls. Good point. I think that we'll see what happens in terms of, Elon was saying there's a 50% reduction in cost inputs. And if a car was selling for, let's say, $45,000, a 50% reduction in cost inputs of all types would mean that, at least your your gross cost would be 50% off. So, 22.5 in theory is Tesla's cost on those vehicles. I think that number sounds too low. Some folks have been talking about 8 to 10K reduction. The point, though, is Tesla's going to make a lot more on Chinese vehicles than they make on other types. So also a reminder, don't go to bed within 2 hours of eating, preferably 4 hours to let the food digest and no acid indigestion. Jerry just made the comment that there's a worldwide recession coming, and we agree. One of the beauties, well, let's put it this way, even if there's a recession and you have a vehicle in China, one of the problems right now is it takes 5 years to get a license to put an ICE vehicle on the road, and there's no delay for electric vehicles. So even if there's a recession, if you've got money, you've got to decide, do you want to walk or take an Uber or a cab for 5 years, or do you want to just buy an electric vehicle? I think that the Chinese are doing a good job of making the value of electric vehicles compelling regardless. So I think it's easy to extrapolate what's happening in America to other places. But let's remember, the Chinese population is huge. Their middle class is 300 million people, which equals the population of the United States. So there's a large number of fairly wealthy folks who need and want transportation and are willing to put dollars up to do it. And the Chinese government is, with stick and with cash, forcing people to go ahead and do this. As we move around the world and look at Tesla's penetration, for example, in Norway, do you want to pay $8 a gallon for gas, or do you want to buy an electric vehicle? So there's a process going on where if you don't buy electric, it's costing a lot of money. So the value proposition of Tesla's, particularly as the price point is being lowered, is still strong all around the world. And that's the case even during a recession. And let's also remember, electric vehicles are less than 1% of the global market for vehicles of all types. So there's a lot of room for transition and very good reasons to do so. At any rate, wanted to again thank you for joining us. Please remember to like and subscribe. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Tschüss, German, Hedge du, Swedish. Thanks to our friend Dalafen for introducing that. Lahit Road, Hebrew. Au revoir, French. Hoda Hafez, Farsi. In Jamaica, we say Nuf respect, walk good man. Have a great day, and I want to thank all of you for your comments and taking time out to join us. And we look forward to our next conversation with you. And as you guys throw out topics, etc., for us to consider, we're happy to do so and integrate them into the show as well. Have a great day, and bye for now.